especially since she's our person for seconding. We're going to wait a minute. Hey, Ed, if we get started and Jen's not back any second.
Yeah.
That's a pretty easy job. I know
I
you've
usually
done
jump
it
in once
before.
in a while when we forget, and I used to do like, they're waiting for a second, and somebody else. I'll tell you who was good at it was Carl.
Yeah.
I mean, he was up a second.
Here she is.
You know, if it was right there, he was on. Hey, Steve, you remember
Thanks for giving me my extra minute.
Phil Palmer? Was he on here for a while? Or he filled in a few times or something?
He may have been for a short time. I know he's on area plan.
Yeah, I think he
I don't know if he was on
about a year.
BCA. You guys ready? I call to order the May 25th, 2022 Area Board of Zoning Appeals of Tippecanoe County. First item on the agenda is the roll call.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alex Burns. I'm here in Eric's stead. I'll be calling the roll. Steve Clevenger,
Present.
Gary Schroeder,
Here.
Michelle Dennis,
Present.
Ed Butts,
Present.
Tom Andrew, Robert Novak,
Present.
Jen Decker.
Present.
And there is indication that Mr. Andrew will be here in several minutes.
Correct, probably about 5 or 10 minutes. So you can adjust that when he comes
Okay.
in. First item on our agenda is approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the April 27th, 2022 BZA public hearing as submitted.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. New business.
There's no new business.
Everything's ready to be heard. Thank you. I will now take the public hearing motion. Public hearing motion, please, Gary.
I move that there be incorporated and the public hearing portion of each application be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, a comprehensive plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report, and recommendations on the application be heard this evening and responses from checkpoint agencies.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. I'd like to briefly explain the procedures for tonight's meeting. Each case will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We'll ask the staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we will ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which any wishing to support the petitioner's request for a variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioner and those speaking on his or her behalf, we will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by those in opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner, supporters, and opponents of the petition, or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of a prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. In the absence of 4 votes, either for or against, the petition is automatically continued to the next meeting. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak. Limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids used to support your arguments will remain the property of the board. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. And would you like people speaking in favor or against the sign on the There's a sign-in sheet for those speaking before or against, if you could sign in on the staff desk right there. With that in mind, we'll go ahead and hear our first case.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2077, John Spalding. Petitioner is requesting a variance to reduce the side setback from the minimum required 4 feet to 2.5 feet for the construction of a 576 square foot garage in an R1U zone. The property is located at 241 Conley Street in West Lafayette, Wabash 17, Southeast 23-4, UZO 4-2-2.
I second.
And we'll hear from staff, please. Maureen?
All right, good evening. This is our first case for the evening. The subject site here is zoned R1U, as is all the surrounding sites. There's some R1 here to the north, R1B, excuse me, and then R1 to the east, and then a spot of this NBU here along Robinson Street, so fairly residentially zoned area. The site contains a single-family residence and a detached garage here that's existing. So petitioner is planning to demolish this existing garage and then replace it with a larger 2-car garage, as Gary read earlier. The site is located in a densely populated single-family portion of the New Chauncey neighborhood. I also wanted to point out that it is part of the New Chauncey Local Historic District. Let's see. Yeah, there's R1U zoning, again, all over this area, and in 2001, it replaced the previously R1B zoning, so there was a massive rezoning effort here that, I can go back to the zoning map here, that left all of this R1U, just so you understand that history a little bit. There's been numerous variance requests in the neighborhood along this Connolly Street, as well as to the north on Lincoln Street. The most recent one actually was very similar to this request. It was BZA 1914, where they granted a reduction of a side setback to 2 feet for a detached garage, so similar situation. Connolly Street here is a urban local road according to thoroughfare plan. The parking requirements for the site is 2 parking spaces, and you can see from this long driveway that that's ample amount of space there for parking. City utilities serve the site, and there's no buffer yard requirements. So as for staff comments, petitioners say that the new structure will not be any closer to the adjacent property. So you can see here how close they are to their neighbor here. That won't change at all. They also would like to keep this location because of the location of the driveway. Would just make it easier. They wouldn't have to disturb that driveway in any way. It could stay exactly the same. They also stated that a side yard of 4 feet would make it really hard to turn into a garage with an increased footprint. So you can kind of see trying to make this clearance around the house here to go in would be quite difficult. So 2 spaces per dwelling unit are required, as I said, but the ordinance does not specify that the spaces must be covered. The site could support 2 spaces in the driveway or in a different, maybe conforming garage if they were to slightly move it over. It's only the petitioner's desire to replace the garage in its current location and size. So because of that, staff just could not find a hardship. It's not a necessity, and also there's some other similar size and shaped lots on Connolly that have 2-car garages that have not gotten variances, so we just couldn't find a hardship. Regarding the ballot items, the Area Plan Commission on May 18th, 2022, determined that the variance request was not a use variance. It's staff's opinion that granting the variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. Use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance request will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The terms of the zoning ordinance are being applied to a situation that is common to other properties in the same zoning district. Again, most lots along Connolly Street were similar in size to this site. Approximately half of the homes have 2-car garages, and again, only 1 variance was granted. Strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will not result in unusual or unnecessary hardship. We could consider this a practical difficulty, but our county's UZO has stricter standards requiring that hardship to be found, and again, we just couldn't find one. So that was the reason that we are recommending denial tonight.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Yeah, I would just, the existing garage is also a two-car garage, and we're replacing it because it's actually not a safe structure. So we're tearing it down because it's already in disarray, and we're just looking to replace it so that we can actually use the structure and not have it fall on our cars. We'd like to put it in the same place so we don't have to tear up a driveway and use the existing driveway. I guess that's all I would add. Any questions?
We'll see if we have any in a minute. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Chad Spitznagel, Building Commissioner. We're usually silent on the BZA cases, but the petitioner has made it through the Historic Preservation Commission. He got all the approvals. We met with him. We agree with his that the structure's in poor condition. So we would also ask you to approve this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone in opposition? Comments, questions from the board? I guess I've got one. How much bigger is the garage? Or is it the same size?
The existing garage is 18 feet wide by 20 feet deep, and the new garage is 24 by 24, which is most modern two-car garages. But the increased footprint would grow into the property, not towards the property line at all.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any either existing, I see there's some mature trees and some other items. Is there anything that is preventing this from being pushed back so that turn radius around the house is not an issue? Or are you attempting to use the existing foundation to reconstruct, or what is the?
The goal is to use the existing driveway. There is also a drop-off in the back of, so pretty much right at the back of the garage, there's a dropping slope in the yard. So the foundation we'd have to pour a heck of a lot more concrete, I guess, in order to keep it at that same level for a parking structure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
I have tallied the votes, and I have 7 yes votes.
We have 7 yes, 0 no. The variance is granted. And we'll hear our second case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2078, David Thomas Isley. Petitioner is requesting the following variance for a remodel and expansion of a single-family home in R1 zone to allow number 1, to allow a decrease in lot width from 75 feet to 72.12 feet, UZO 2-1-5. Number 2, to reduce the front setback from the minimum required 60 feet to 45.3 feet, UZO 4-2-2 and 2-1-7, and number 3, to reduce the side setback from the minimum required 6 feet to 5.2 feet, UZO 42-2 and 2-1-9. The property is located at 1721 Northwestern Avenue and West Lafayette, Wabash, 18 Northwest, 23-4.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. And we'll hear from staff, please.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Hiddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David Hiddle with the Area Plan Commission. A procedural, or I guess administrative matter first. We just learned from the petitioner that the sign that was placed on the site that warns motorists and people nearby that there's a hearing coming up indicated that the hearing would be heard at Lafayette City Hall rather than here. The MELD notice went out as required, so neighboring property owners are all aware of it, and we did not receive any phone calls about it. The board can, at its pleasure, waive one or more of the notice rules if it feels that doing so is appropriate. And therefore, the thing could go forward tonight rather than be delayed for a month. It was staff's error, so it wasn't the petitioner's fault. And having not heard from anybody in terms of concerned neighbors, and this being a relatively modest request, we wouldn't have any problem with it going forward tonight. But I think you would need to vote to waive that rule of procedure if you want to do that. Mr. Shellman might want to speak on the matter.
Please come up to the mic, please.
Sorry. Good evening. Chris Shellman of Gutwein Law, 250 Main Street. 2 other procedural notes on that. I would note that the publications were also published in both newspapers, and that Mr. Isley, who petitioner was also at City Hall, can attest that nobody else was there waiting to go to a meeting.
Do you have any, turn on your mic.
The board could take a vote and find whether or not sufficient notice has been given. If that is the case, they'd essentially be waiving that staff error notice requirement, finding sufficient has been provided.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion so we can discuss?
I would move that we would consider
notice?
proper notice is served. Even though the error was made, it does not appear that there's a lot of public input on this matter. So I move that we waive the error on the sign for Lafayette City Hall and go ahead and hear the case tonight.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? It seems that we have a couple people here for the case anyway, and granted that the petitioner was at City Hall and no one was there, letters were correct, so other notification was correct. I'm assuming that the legal notice was correct as well?
Yes.
So, I mean, it seems reasonable to me. We need a vote if there are no other comments. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous, so we'll hear the case.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Sure. The subject site is about a quarter acre, and it is on Northwestern Avenue, just south of Lindbergh Road, shown here outlined in red. It's zoned R1, surrounded by R1 zoning, surrounded by a number of different subdivisions, a little bit south of a commercial node on the corner of Northwestern and Lindbergh. The home was built in 1956. This is an aerial view. That's a as-built survey of existing conditions, so it's one-story home on slab, typical of the homes in the area. Apparently has not been improved significantly since its original construction. The petitioner, Mr. Isley, is requesting 3 different variances, and they all pertain to a desire to build on additions to the property. The areas in yellow would be new enclosed building areas. Of the 3 variances, staff is supportive of 2, and we have a concern about 1 of them, so we'll take them in turn, but let me walk you around the property first. The picture on the left shows the garage. There would be a 8-foot addition built, 8 feet extending toward the road, toward the picture taker in this case. And then the photo on the right shows the relationship between the house and the south adjoining house. Another photo of the front facade of the building. The variance that we're going to talk most about pertains to the bedroom opposite the garage where you see jutting out there. It would be built another 4 feet toward the street. And then the photo on the right is looking north along Northwestern. There's the variance sign, which they dutifully posted, in which it did not have the right address. And then look along the northern property line, so you can see the subject property on the left and then the neighboring property on the right. This is a photograph of 3 houses south of the structure, all of them with approximately the same setback from Northwestern Avenue, all of them built approximately in the mid-50s. And then this is a diagram that shows the subject site down here in red, and it shows 2 other properties, both of which were granted variances for front setbacks, one in 1998 and one in 2003, both for about 30-foot front setbacks. So there is a precedent, there's a history in the area for grant of a variance similar to what is being requested here. I'm going to take you back to this. So in turn, let's talk about the 3 variance requests. Number 1 and number 3, staff supports. I'll go over those really quickly. Number 1 is to allow for a decrease in lot width from 75 feet to 72.12 feet. What's required is the 75 feet. The lot was built with the 72.12 foot lot width. Our thought is that more than likely, the house was built in 56, the zoning ordinance was changed in 65. And we think that at the time, the zoning ordinance allowed for a 70-foot lot width, or required, I should say, a minimum 70-foot lot width, added 5 feet to that later, and so it's a legal non-conforming lot now. This variance would simply be a cleanup variance to further establish that. So we're supportive there. Variance request number 3 has to do with the side setback of this portion here. And it's very much the same issue as the lot width. Currently, there's a 5.2-foot side setback. That's all that is proposed. They wouldn't be expanding the house at all toward the side. And currently, there's a 6-foot side setback required, although it was 5 feet at the time the house was built, so it's legal non-conforming. This variance would simply be further legally establishing that side setback, so we have no problem with that. The number 2 variance is the one that we're going to talk about. That involves this small 4-foot expansion of an existing bedroom toward the street. So it currently provides the house a 49.3-foot front setback. Today's zoning ordinance requires a 60-foot front setback. So we would be plenty happy to support legally establishing that 49.3-foot front setback, but as their desire is to go further toward the road, another 4 feet, so it would be a 45.3-foot setback. That would be against the ordinance, the current ordinance. And though there's a practical difficulty present, similar to Maureen's case, there is no hardship present. And as you know, the findings that this BZA is beholden to observe deal with hardship rather than practical difficulty. Hardship is a more stringent test. Because there is room elsewhere to build outward, this 4 by perhaps 12-foot, 4 by 12 or 15-foot expansion. There is no hardship present. We can't determine that there is one. And in service of the ordinance, our recommendation for variance number 2 is denial. We would support it if it were to be amended to just legally establish the current 49.3-foot setback. But we can't support the additional encroachment towards the street. Does that make sense? Any questions?
If that ordinance were to be denied, I mean, let's say it was at 45.3, then they could not add on to the front either then on the other side, onto the garage.
Well, actually, I believe, Chris can maybe confirm this for us, I think that this expansion takes it out to, it would not encroach beyond the existing established front building line. So if you were to approve 49.5, 49.3, it would allow for this full.
If we were to allow the 49.3, but if we did not allow the 49.3, or the,
Right, if you
If-
disallowed that, then it goes back to 60.
correct,
But, yeah, we're supportive of the 49.3.
Correct.
We're just not able to go all the way to 45.3. But you're right, yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
No, the problem is that the house sits in front, so the 49, to clarify, the 49.3 feet is the current bedroom. So if the current, I mean, if it's approved at 49.3, then they can add on to the garage.
But the two approvals are lot width and side setback.
Right, but this one right here is a front setback, and because the front setback is 60 feet, and the garage is, the addition to the garage would encroach into that 60 feet.
Right.
So if the.
They would have to amend it
They would have to amend it to 49.3.
to get the garage as well.
To get the garage as well. If it's at 45.3 and we deny it, then
Okay.
they can't, both fronts are out.
Both fronts are out.
Are out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Right.
I would note that
Appreciate that clarification.
they can amend it verbally downward at the hearing. So
Correct.
they wouldn't require a continuance or anything.
Correct. Petitioner,
Good evening.
thank you.
Chris Shellman, 250 Main Street again, here on behalf of petitioner Tom Isley. Tom Isley is a civil engineering professor who moved to Purdue recently and purchased this house. Actually, this house was a friend of mine when he attended Purdue and lived there 15, 16 years ago. So it's interesting to see this come around full circle. As Mr. Hiddle noted, the house hasn't, he certainly didn't improve it any, but the house hasn't been improved much since it was constructed in 1950s. And Mr. Isley is proposing a significant remodel of the property, which will be in excess of $400,000. We think enhancing it for the overall community. The specific area at issue is this front bedroom, which is the primary bedroom, so to speak, and is quite small in its existing format, about 11 feet in length. In addition, the footings in that bedroom need to be redone, so Mr. Isley was taking this opportunity to restore that foundation and add that 4 feet. With respect to the front setback, the 60-foot setback required by the ordinance it wasn't contemplated when the structure was originally designed. And I would also note that in addition, the property line is set back even further from the sidewalk and the road. If you remember from the, I don't know how to go left or right, but the photograph, you can see the stake from the surveyor denoting the property line. So what we're really talking about is a modest 4-foot expansion to redo the foundation, make the bedroom fitting with the rest of the house, and it would certainly be in line with the neighborhood and those passing by on the sidewalk or the road without any actual knowledge of the lot line wouldn't know either way. we'd be certainly happy to answer any questions or concerns with respect to that. But we would submit that this request is modest in comparison to the other petitions that have been granted in the past, which Mr. Hiddle referenced were a 30-foot setback, and we're about 15 feet in excess of that from Northwestern. So with that, we would respectfully request approval on all three variances and would be happy to answer or discuss any of those matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Good evening, Board. I'm John Gritzner. I live at 1725 Northwestern Avenue. So I am very much in favor of this addition to the Isley home. The proposed addition would not affect our property in any way but make it better. So I am very much in favor of the operation. What I don't think showed up very well in any of the photos is that there is currently a bush placed which extends 4 feet in front of the house, right where the extension is supposed to. You can see it in that picture, yes. The one on the right shows the curved bush, and it's, so that shows directly how much of that's the 4 feet, because that is almost exactly 4 feet in front of the house where the proposed area is, and we would strongly support the renovation. That will definitely improve the house. We've lived there for 50 years, so we know it well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, in those brick pavers that you see there.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition? Comments, questions from the board?
Question.
You want to turn on your mic, Tom?
Turn on the mic. The house was built in the 50s. I was born in 80, don't put that in the minutes. But has Northwestern been widened since then?
I assume so, but I don't know specifically.
Just got rid of Smitty's?
I'll recognize you, Mr. Grunster.
No, it has not. When we moved in, it was US 52. So it has used to have highway status before. A number of changes have been made.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, we've got 3 ballots.
Tallying the votes for the first variance, we have 7 yes votes, 0 no votes. Second variance, 7 yes votes, 0 no votes. Third variance, 7 yes votes, and 0 no votes.
Thank you. All 3 variances are approved. Administrative matters.
No administrative matters?
Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. And I'll take the last motion.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.